The Jim and Terry Show with Jim back from his hiatus with his cold, fully mended, and ready to chat up a storm. I'm Terry.
If you could read my mind, love, what a tale my thoughts would tell. Just like an old-time movie.
Jim's got his gypsy oracle in front of him.
Well.
He's looking into the orb and asking people to read his mind, and I pick up the thought that he's going to do an homage to Gordon Lightfoot.
The great Gordon Lightfoot has passed away, the Canadian icon. Someone who was
It requires a clink of our...
Here's a clink to Gordon Lightfoot.
Clink of the coffee.
And a slurp. Boom.
And notice our coffee cups do have coffee, but if you were Gordon Lightfoot back in the early 60s, it would have been whiskey or something else, and you wouldn't have had one, you would have had two or three, and yeah, he was quite a...
Well, he
entertainer.
admitted, you sent a documentary along, and he admitted that he went through a time when he was a bit of a jerk. He was bad to people, and was obviously bad to himself. And we talked about in a previous show that'll never be aired about how easy it is to get dragged away into that world because you're surrounded now. You're a celebrity. Everybody who wants to be with you isn't going to make do anything to make you not want them around. So they would suck up to people like Gordon Lightfoot, the Beatles.
We've
many
seen
celebrities.
the careers of people like you mentioned, Amy Winehouse, and I'm thinking of Queen and
Freddie Mercury?
Freddie Mercury, and how the people he surrounded himself with dragged him down.
Oh,
into
absolutely.
Some very bizarre places. So the influence of friends, yeah. But in the 60s, in downtown Toronto, it was a time of flower power, of hippies, of all things musical, and coffee houses.
I think of our friend Gord, where I was maybe a year or two behind him. He was there at that time. He remembers when Joni Mitchell came to town. And he would have seen Gordon Lightfoot and all of those guys live. He would have been sitting in it. What did you say it was called? The Whistle?
Steam Whistle.
Steam Whistle or something
club,
like that.
Yeah, there were a number of places where they played downtown.
And he remembers those days. And then he had to get an education so he could do my taxes for me. And so thank you, Gord.
Here's a shout out to Gord.
Yeah, thank you, Gord, for doing that. But he saw a lot of these people and watched them perform before they had made it. And that would have been wonderful.
It would have been wonderful to have seen him live, and I did have that opportunity, but in the post-coffee house era, I'm fascinated with the coffee house period because that was just 10, 15 years ahead of me and my interest in playing guitar and music. So I'm fascinated with that whole coffee house scene, which disappeared in front of my eyes, and I lamented the gap in years. I wished I was Gordy's age. Not now. He's just passed away, so R.I.P. Gordon Lightfoot. But let's talk about some of the influential songs that came out of those early folk days of Gordon Lightfoot.
Trying to sing one there, If You Could Read My Mind, which has been covered by everybody from Elvis, you name it, the people who have covered that song, famous artists.
It's been covered in various styles, too. It was interpreted as a disco tune.
As a disco tune, yeah.
It's hard to imagine the Bee Gees doing that song, but...
But he was such a great songwriter. The Canadian Railway Trilogy, that one, Sundown, You Better Take Care, If I Catch You Groveling Around My Backstairs. I forget the line. But
I forget it too.
Yeah.
We get the image.
Yeah, but great songs the guy wrote. And he had that very recognizable voice, which probably was great in the coffee houses.
I guess it was high enough that he could get through a lot of the stuff. Whereas somebody said he was a baritone, and I mentioned that I don't think he was. He was a little bit higher, maybe in a tenor range as a singer. But that voice, in that pitch, gets you through a lot of the
it might
background
just
noise
cut right through the crowd, and
the twanging of guitars.
Well, he had such a voice for acoustic.
Yeah,
he had such a good voice where he could stand there with guitar, and it, and entertain you.
Yes.
And make you go, that's great. I find that amazing. You know what I mean? Not very many people can do that. We got to remember Dylan did that too. That's where he started, just standing up with him in the guitar. But I would say
Same
over
with Leonard
Dylan, Gordon Lightfoot had a real voice over many of the people of his time. That time period, Terry, back in the
60s?
the 60s. You know what I liked about that, and not just in Toronto, but in LA and all over, there seemed to be, if you had a guitar and you could talk to a buddy, you were going to make it. There was
you
that
could have a
optimism.
band.
Yeah, you were going to make it no matter, I mean, wasn't it the Mamas and the Papas? That's how they formed or something?
Yeah,
They said,
Out of
let's just get
conversations.
together and bang. And next thing you know, they got an album. They were just pumped out like that. And everybody seemed to make it.
What's that valley in San Francisco where a lot of the bands came together and exchanged ideas and
Yeah,
out?
why can't I think of that?
I can't think of it either. Anyway, yeah, it was a great period of time and a great outpouring of folk music that changed into electronic or rock at some point. Gordon Lightfoot did his experimentations with different genres too throughout his career, but his core, I think, was always the guitar and the voice.
Yeah, bordering on a Western sound, but not Western, because he had other musicians when he was in his heyday, and I'm sure they were the Rat Pack of his time, for him, the loyal musicians that would back
he
him
had
up.
quite a group. So here's a testimony to the backing band for Gordon Lightfoot because he traveled with them all the time. Red O'Shea on bass, I think, is the one that I remember most, and he had one or two lead guitarists who did some amazing fills, and the Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald with the haunting.
Oh, that's haunting, yeah.
So that came out of the minds of his supporting cast who knew what he wanted and said, how about this? And this music is recorded.
Isn't that what you want?
Yeah.
I mean, really,
You want some backing group who could read your mind?
Yeah. But you also want a person that will allow them to read your mind and give them that liberty. I mean, my brother Bobby always talks about, the song, the Beatles song, I Give Her All My Love. I give her.
Yeah,
it
ballad.
goes, ba-da-da-dum. That was George. That wasn't planned. And then Paul said, that's just fabulous. Yeah. So just that little ba-na-na-na, ba-da-na-na, boom, boom, made the song. Just made the song. So I think it's
you
great.
need those musical hooks. And
Yeah.
a lot of his do have that hook, from Sundown to Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald to one song we didn't mention in our discussions was Race Among the Ruins, and there's a few on that album. Summertime. Was it Summertime? I'm getting my albums mixed up. But there are so many. Bitter Green was one of my favorites. Bitter Green, they called her. Walking in the sun.
Yeah, great song.
Loving everyone. that
One of
she
my
met.
regrets is I never really followed Bob Dylan. I never really followed Gordon Lightfoot. Yet, he's
he
got
wasn't
one of those
your-
sounds that if it came on the radio,
He
you would
wasn't
change it.
your genre. You were rock.
I guess I was rock, but I liked Gordon Lightfoot. I liked the sound that he
But you had
produced.
not enough to follow him. Whereas I was a junkie. I was a Gordon Lightfoot junkie, and I told you my days of performing with the Toronto Schools Orchestra in Massey Hall, and my carting my cello off onto the stage and visualizing Gordon Lightfoot would be performing on the same stage.
Yeah, that'd be glorious.
And when I go into the bowels of Massey Hall and I wander around with my section, my cello section, and I'm thinking, I wonder where Gord's band would have been. Gord, as if we know the guy. Gordon Lightfoot's band was tuning up and doing their little riffs and warm up, and you said there were likely to be gifts of alcoholic
Well, that's
beverages.
what I'm thinking. Yeah, because you said you saw him once that
Yeah.
it was almost embarrassing because he had already been
He'd
into that.
already started.
Yeah.
So
And I think there's a lot of musicians that have had to face that, where they've had to come to the decision, okay, you just can't drink before you're performing here, bud. You're going to ruin everything. We talked Amy Winehouse, where she had
Wrong crowd.
horrible, embarrassing moments on stage. And she was a great singer for her time, but she got so plastered, she got booed off the stage. Imagine that. So you said with Gordon Lightfoot, that one time you could tell he was not with it.
Yeah, that's right. He was off his game. But I would go for several years. I got tickets to the annual Gordon Lightfoot series in Toronto's Massey Hall. So it was significant for me to buy tickets and to support him and to see him live and to hear the live version of songs that you hear recorded. And by and large, it was pretty close to what you heard is what you got in concert. And that's pretty amazing. Whereas for me, none of my stuff, I wouldn't know how to begin to put it together on stage.
Well, yeah, because we don't, I think it would be wonderful if all of a sudden a bunch of guys knocked on my door, bass player, lead guitar player, drummer, and a bongo player, and everything, and keyboarders, and said, we want to be your band.
We'll travel with you.
We'll travel with you. I would love that. You know what I mean? So I can't imagine what that would be like. Where I mean, even when I played with Gord and Alex and my son John and Gord's daughter Dana, I remember I would say I'd get together with Alex, the keyboard player, and I'd use terms like, hear the wind, Alex, hear the wind, it's blowing his face, hear the wind, and he'd find what I want. And I love that, and I love the guy because of his cooperative attitude towards it all.
Isn't that funny that we achieve more when we cooperate and when we are supported in our ideas?
Yeah. Oh, that's why I said I would just love someone knock on my door and say, God told me, we need to back you up, and let's get these songs together, and let's hit the road. I'd do it in a minute. But so far, that hasn't happened.
I'd be a little skeptical if anybody showed up at my door and said, God told me anything. That's another discussion for another day. Favorite Gordon Lightfoot song, above all, first one that comes to mind?
I would think Sundown.
Sundown. Okay. I'm going to go with Canadian Railroad Trilogy because it comes from his folky origins and because I used to use it in my ESL class. And I think it's a great testimony to how Canada developed in the spirit of being Canadian. The Jim and Terry Show. Looking at Gordon Lightfoot, a little retrospective from one adoring fan and one who looked at him from a distance.
Rest in peace, Gordon.
Rest in peace. The Jim and Terry Show signing off. Bye-bye for now.